Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Jr., born on August 17, 1887. Garvey was born as the youngest of 11 children in St. Ann's Bay, Jamaica, to Marcus Mosiah Garvey, a mason, and Sarah Jane Richards, a domestic worker. Only his sister Indiana and Marcus survived to adulthood. His family was financially stable given the circumstances of this time period. Garvey's father had a large library, and it was from his father that Marcus gained his love for reading. He also attended elementary schools in St. Ann's Bay during his youth. While attending these schools, Garvey first began to experience racism. When Marcus was younger, he used to be friends with his white neighbors and play with all of them all the time. However, when they reached their teenage years, they began to shun him. In 1910, Marcus left Jamaica and began traveling throughout the Central American region. His first stop was Costa Rica, where he had a maternal uncle. He lived in Costa Rica for several months, where he worked as a timekeeper on a banana plantation. He began work as editor in a daily newspaper called Le Nociale in 1911. Later that year, he moved to Colón, Panama, where he edited a bi-weekly newspaper before returning to Jamaica in 1912. After years of working in the Caribbean, Garvey left Jamaica to live in London from 1912 to 1914, where he attended Birkbeck College, taking classes in law and philosophy. He also worked for the African Times and Orient Review, published by Duse Muhammad Ali, who was a considerable influence on the young man. Garvey sometimes spoke at Hyde Park's Speaker's Corner. Garvey's philosophy was also influenced by African American leaders such as Booker T. Washington, Martin Delany, and Henry McNeill Turner. Garvey is said to have been influenced by the ideas of Duse Muhammad Ali in his speeches, and his later organizing of the Universal Negro Improvement Association in Jamaica in 1914. Garvey was a Jamaican politician leader, publisher, journalist, entrepreneur, and orator who was a staunch proponent of the black nationalism and Pan-Africanism movements. He founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. He founded the Black Star Line, part of the Back to Africa movement, which promoted the return of the Africa diaspora to their ancestral lands. Garvey was unique in advancing a Pan-African philosophy to inspire a global mass movement and economic empowerment focusing on Africa known as Garveyism. Garveyism would eventually inspire others, ranging from the Nation of Islam to the Rastafari movement, which proclaims Garvey as a prophet. In 1914, Garvey returned to Jamaica, where he organized the UNIA. Historian Rashid suggests that the UNIA motto, "One God, One Aim, One Destiny," was derived from Duse Ali's Islamic influence. Garvey named the organization the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. The UNIA held an international convention in 1921 at New York's Madison Square Garden. Also represented at the convention were organizations such as the Universal Black Cross Nurses and Black Eagle Flying Corporations and the Universal African Legion. Garvey attracted more than 50,000 people to the event and his cause. The UNIA had 65,000 to 75,000 members paying dues to his support and funding. The national level of support in Jamaica helped Garvey to become one of the most influential leaders of the 20th century on the island. Shortly after returning from a long tour of the Caribbean and Central America, in July 1921, Marcus Garvey recorded 2 brief speeches. This is the second video and is an extract from a much longer UNIA membership appeal.
Fellow citizens of Africa, I greet you in the name of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League of the World. You may ask, what organization is that? It is for me to inform you that the Universal Negro Improvement Association is an organization that seeks to unite into one solid body the 400 million Negroes of the world, to link up the 15 million Negroes of the United States of America with the 20 million Negroes of the West Indies, the 40 million Negroes of South and Central America with the 280 million Negroes of Africa for the purpose of bettering our industrial, commercial, educational, social, and political conditions. As you are aware, the world in which we live today is divided into separate race groups and distinct nationalities. Each race and each nationality is endeavoring to work out its own destiny to the exclusion of other races and other nationalities. We hear the cry of England for the Englishman, of France for the Frenchman, of Germany for the German, of Ireland for the Irish, of Palestine for the Jew, of Japan for the Japanese, of China for the Chinese. We of the Universal Negro Movement Association are raising the cry of Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. There are 400 million Africans in the world who have Negro blood coursing through their veins. And we believe that the time has come to unite these 400 million people for the one common purpose of bettering their condition. The great problem of the Negro for the last 500 years has been that of this unity. No one or no organization ever succeeded in uniting the Negro race. But within the last 4 years, the Universal Negro Movement Association has worked wonders in bringing together in one fold 4 million organized Negroes who are scattered in all parts of the world, being in the 48 states of the American Union, all the West Indian Islands, and the countries of South and Central America and Africa. These 4 million people are working to convert the rest of the 400 million scattered all over the world. And it is for this purpose that we are asking you to join our ranks and to do the best you can to help us to bring about an emancipated race. If anything praiseworthy is to be done, it must be done through unity. And it is for that reason that the Universal Negro Movement Association calls upon every Negro in the United States to rally to its standard. We want to unite the Negro race in this country. We want every Negro to work for one common object, that of building a nation of his own on the great continent of Africa. That all Negroes all over the world are working for the establishment of a government in Africa means that it will be realized in another few years. We want the moral and financial support of every Negro to make the dream a possibility. Already, this organization has established itself in Nigeria, West Africa, and is endeavoring to do all possible to develop that Negro country to become a great industrial and commercial commonwealth. Pioneers have been sent by this organization to Nigeria, and they are now laying the foundations upon which the 400 million Negroes of the world will build. If you believe that the Negro has a soul, if you believe that the Negro is a man, if you believe the Negro was endowed with the senses commonly given to other men by the Creator, then you must acknowledge that what other men have done, Negroes can do. We want to build up cities, nations, governments, industries of our own in Africa, so that we'll be able to have a chance to rise from the lowest to the highest positions in the African Commonwealth.
After moving to New York, he found work as a printer by day. He was influenced by Herbert Harrison. At night, he would speak on street corners, much as he did in London's Hyde Park. Garvey thought there was a leadership vacuum among African Americans. On May 9, 1916, he held his first public lecture in New York City at St. Mark's Church in the Bowery and undertook a 38-state speaking tour. The next year, in May 1917, Garvey and 13 others formed the first UNIA division outside Jamaica. They began advancing ideas to promote social, political, and economic freedom for black people. On July 2nd, the East St. Louis riots broke out. On July 8th, Garvey delivered an address entitled The Conspiracy of the East St. Louis Riots at Lafayette Hall in Harlem. During the speech, he declared the riot was one of the bloodiest outrages against mankind, condemning America's claims to represent democracy when black people were victimized for no other reason than they are black people seeking an industrial chance in a country that they have labored for 300 years to make great. It is a time to lift one's voice against the savagery of people who claim to be the dispensers of democracy. By October, rancor within the UNIA had begun to set in. A split occurred in the Harlem Division, with Garvey enlisted to become its leader. On 27th of June 1919, the UNIA set up its first business, incorporating the Black Star Line of Delaware, with Garvey as president. By September, it acquired its first ship. Much fanfare surrounded the inspection of the SS Yarmouth and its rechristening as the SS Frederick Douglass on September 14th, 1919. Such a rapid accomplishment garnered attention from many. On October 14, 1919, Garvey received a visit in his Harlem office from George Tyler, who claimed Cairo had sent him to get the leader. Tyler pulled a .38 caliber revolver and fired 4 shots, wounding Garvey in the right leg and scalp. Garvey's secretary, Ainley, quickly arranged to get Garvey taken to the hospital for treatment, and Tyler was arrested. The next day, Tyler committed suicide by leaping from the 3rd tier of the Harlem jail as he was being taken to his arraignment. Over the next couple of years, Garvey's movement was able to attract an enormous number of followers. Reasons for this included the Cultural Revolution of the Harlem Renaissance, the large number of West Indians who migrated to New York, and the appeal of the slogan, "One aim, one God, one destiny," to black veterans of the World War.
Garvey died in London on June 10, 1940, at age 52 after suffering 2 strokes putatively after reading a mistaken and negative obituary of himself in Chicago Defender in January earlier that same year, which stated in part that Garvey died broke, alone, and unpopular. Due to travel restrictions during World War II, his body was interred, no burial mentioned, but preserved in a lead-lined coffin within the lower crypt in St. Mary's Catholic Cemetery in London near Kensal Green Cemetery. 20 years later, his body was removed from the shells of the lower crypt and taken to Jamaica, where the government proclaimed him Jamaica's first national hero and reinterred him at a shrine in National Heroes Park. That concludes our presentation. Thank you very much.